we all know that things are pretty much stagnating around us, economy, and even in the political scene, things don't seem to be moving at the pace we would want them to move. Mr. Murthy, IT is a sector which has a lot of young people, and you must be feeling these, the ups and downs, getting to people, the tough times, inflation, all of these. So it's not just a question of dealing with what a company is going through, but the environment outside. So, is it a fact that companies acknowledge that these are times when sentiment is low among employees for various reasons? Do you actually sit and talk about these things?
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, with employees being the most critical asset for us, conversations around employees happen every day, every time. The critical aspect from where is the negativity coming from, right? And if you analyze that, it's partly a fear, the fear of the unknown, fear of not knowing will jobs grow the way they have been before. There's the element of trust, and then there is the element of misinformation sometimes, or certainly the lack of information, right? So I would look at it as give employees a sense of pride of association by celebrating success, help deepen the trust by simply saying what you do and do what you say, and communicate.
You do it on a proactive basis, or you sort of sense that the mood is getting low, the morale is getting low? Typically, appraisals are the time when I'm sure you must all be feeling this. What do you say, Mayank? Is this?
We have formal ways to look at what the engagement morale levels are, but more than that, I think it's the pulsing by leaders, who travel across the country and meet people at different levels and try and gauge what is the level of morale and engagement in our people. And the moment we start seeing a trend where a part of the organization or a part of a business is in some ways demoralized or disengaged, we then start looking at the reasons, as Stan talked about, but also then start looking at how do we improve our engagement in those places. So I would say it's a continuous process than just a one-in-time kind of an activity.
What about you, Mr. Biswas? Do you sense that it's been particularly bad, or you work across geographies? So how is it, India versus some other market? And
a couple of things that we do at Accenture is, one, treating our employees as fully mature professionals and having a conversation which is straight. Telling them that, look, this is the new normal. This is what the business is looking forward. So we have seen that is something which is beneficial. People understand. They want to understand. No longer, I think it's a young workforce which needs to be engaged, and an extension of a college atmosphere that we need to create. Second is about, like I said, giving them opportunities to develop their skills and knowledge. That's a big thing for this knowledge worker in today's industry. The third is about participative management. We take pride in being a listening organization. Tan talked about. Mayank talked about listening to them as a continuum process, not only the engagement results which come out of the survey every year, but making a continuum effort to listen and make your employees participate in the organization building process.
What has been your experience, Shrikant? We were having a conversation before we came here, and it's interesting that you came up and you said that a lot has been happening within your organization, and I would love to know what is it and how have you been dealing with a huge workforce across, again, different centers, geographies.
We have put a lot of austerity measures in the last 18 months, and we know the pain of going through that. Today, if you look at the operating income of the company, the cash flow, the profitability, the customer intimacy, everything, we have come a long way. So the bottom line is, we call it a straight talk, and we developed a toolkit. And the engagement model, how do you engage people on a converse? We are in 75 countries. In India itself, we have 28,000 employees in 7 locations. 5 companies merged, like App Labs, Covansys. 5 companies. Integrating these 5 companies which acquired over the last 4 years is not an easy task. So one bottom line is leadership, culture, and within culture, how do you engage over a straight talk so that people appreciate and understand, and also keep on updating people on town halls, communication, and how do you engage people on an organizational transformation?
Priya, you work on the other side, and he mentioned you. So I'm expecting you to actually tell me, what is it that you hear, and what is it that you really find often when you go and speak to leaders and, they discuss these issues with you. It's not only about finding the right talent, but also discussing many other attending things that would attract the right talent to the place.
You are looking at turbulent times very often from the other side. A reflection of these turbulent times is a lot more people out there, a lot more people engaging with a search firm because they're sort of de-risking themselves, and that's a good word to use in this context because people want to de-risk. So from a search perspective, when you look at the leadership angle and when you look at the sourcing or the leadership supply angle, it's very different. There has been a maturing of the space in the last 10 years. And I say 10 years because it seems like, a solid piece of time to relate to. Shami, I don't know whether you remember, we had a conversation many years ago about the response to a pink slip, right?
Absolutely. And how different cultures can, be when it comes to pink slip.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, somewhere at the heart of this, so while I present a different perspective, what's also important is we also belong to the Indian, the geography, where I think where you go to is a large part of your identity. And therefore, I think Indian leaders, HR and business, are more sensitive, or if they're not, they've learned to be more sensitive about embracing this part of the Indian psyche, which is a large part of who I am, is where I work, or how I work. So the constant communication that Srikanth referred to, the town halls that Manoj was talking about, and the kind of engagement is critical because, what goes around comes around. People who have gone through difficult times with organizations and are still buoyant, respectful of them, are a great resource in the future. They speak very well of the organization.
How do you look at keeping the morale high, even as you have to cut costs and probably let go of some people and not let it bother?
Companies grow because they are relevant to their clients. So you need to create an avenue for employees to be relevant to the company. And that is where all the investment on reskilling people for the new requirements for the client is very, very critical. And so making that investment, making the time available for them to look at what is coming and how we can provide interventions for them to develop those skills so that they can continue to be relevant is very, very critical. Being transparent and then creating a culture that recognizes performance.
IT industries matured, and the kind of gains one saw people making in this industry, or the salaries people drawing, were absolutely the thing that perfect stories were made of. And now that's not happening because the industry's matured, and the kind of growth that happened in salaries is not happening anymore. And when people don't get that, that does tend to affect morale quite a bit, even though things are stable. So that's also a real factor.
So on the aspect of how do you react to a situation, I think it's important to keep your pulse and be aware of what is going on the ground. So having not just the managers come back to you, but also having the connect with what we call the voice of youth. People who are really on the ground, talking to people, talking to friends on what is going on, and being able to create those channels, listening channels, is really what makes the difference in how you go back and address the issue that may be simmering, and that could be simmering simply because they don't have the full information. On the issue of compensation, I think we live in a world of relative misery. It's not so much about what I get or don't get, but I'm unhappy that you get something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And that's the part that I think we need to continuously address through, again, transparency and recognition of performance, where people know that when you do what you need to do, you will get what you're worth.
The talent matters culture is very, very important. We need to really shameful to let a person go in an organization, and we need to see, can I invest in reskilling, upskilling, can I redeploy, can I have patience for another 3 months waiting for another assignment for that person rather than go and ask him for a quarterly results. So that kind of an investment, I'm telling long vision, at least one more quarter vision, if you can have it, it works very well. So look at we started developing an heuristics that if that person cannot be deployed in the same project, can you deploy in some other project? If not, can you reskill him for another 20%, 30%? So we started creating heuristics.
So
If
you're
enough-
saying that sends out a very powerful message in the
Message
community,
that
that you are trying your best
Exactly. Once you do everything, then you give him a pink slip and tell him, look, I tried all my best, then it's not working. Then how do you execute that? You explain the logic of doing it and do it with heart.
The other thing which we haven't really touched about is, while we talked about saying, we should be listening and we should be looking at the pulse, etc. We are an IT organization. We need to innovate and reinvent ourselves to say, how do we measure consistently? For example, in Accenture, we do something called as sentiment analytics. Now, this is a very simple thing about, a lot of things are being said about the organization by different levels across, a lot of things get written on the external website, internal website. Accenture every 6 months does analytics on something
That's
called as sentiment analytics. And we know that these are 5 or 6 sentiments or area that are important to us.
The mood derailers.
Yeah, and that is something that we work upon. So you have to think out of the box. One of the things that we put in place was, during this troubled time, was a program called Hours That Help. It's a very simple program. We saw that some people need more vacation than what is prescribed as per the guidelines of the organization. And if you give more during troubled times, it is, the business sees that as a financial loss. So we actually analyze data to say, there is a 20-25% of your organization which does not utilize all the leave. So why don't we ask your friends to contribute hours to help you, because this is your time of need. It's a simple, engaging factor. The employee loves it. A lot of people have taken this opportunity. They are thankful to their teams because they have contributed X number of hours to make that happen.
What does it take as you go higher up the ranks, in terms of training? Do you feel that constant input is necessary? And yes, if it is necessary, then how are companies doing enough about it?
Organizations are very, very efficiency driven at the end of the day, right? So therefore, to be able to, and I heard terms like reskilling, Manoj, you were referring to upskilling, and so what is the intent? The intent is that how do I actually make my resources absolutely productive? If I have visibility of certain billability to happen, if I don't find them, how can I actually quickly train them and get them addressed, right? And hence it's pretty much driven towards in terms of here and now. So it's a lot of training, right? So there's a dichotomy, and the dichotomy is that the boardroom discussion is about how you're enabling organizations to the future, and it's a sector which is changing and rechanging, and a lot of innovation needs to be brought in. But at a ground level, you are pretty much actually just focused on training, and there is a fundamental difference between training and learning, right? And so it's very ROI driven. So I will do something which can actually show me the return immediately. But the real development and where the real need is, that will actually play out over a period of time, and it is for the long haul. And I do not think organizations demonstrate that kind of patience, and to be able to make that sustained investment to groom that cadre of people from within the organization.
Companies have to actually spend that kind of money on people to make them, specific to the needs of their organization. It's a done thing everywhere. Would you like to share, because you work at that?
I think the repair, prepare, upgrade continuum, companies can intervene, they can put their resources to work in firm-specific skills, they can do last-mile repair, but they cannot substitute for the education system. That's just an unrealistic expectation which will not be met, and has actually, frankly, never been met anywhere in the world.
There's a difference when it comes to specific skills and the soft skills. And would you like to elaborate on those?
Right.
How do you measure them? How do you map them?
When you talk about soft skills, right, a lot of that has to do with, things like how do I communicate? What is my presence, right? It could be around how do I become an effective people manager? How effective am I as a leader? And various other roles, right, that I might end up playing within the organization. Now, some of that is heard, but not necessarily internalized at an immediate level. In many instances, one could hear it, right, also experience it. But once again, it's also the intent, right, of the person that comes into play. And again, there's an element of choice as a person, right, as a people manager. What do I choose to be? Am I choosing to treat this employee in a certain way only because the company is expecting me of it and I've, yes, been through certain classes and through certain expectation sets? Or, what is the value system I bring into play, right, when I treat that employee in a certain way? And so soft skills, we find, right, is a far more complex and demanding area where, typically there's a fairly long time lag between, how you articulate your expectations, what you train the individual on, and what gets displayed, right, at the end of it, in that sense.
So, to bring you in, it's interesting that the banking and finance sector, has created virtually another, you've invested, banks are going and training people, picking up and specifically training them for their needs. What is the kind of experience that you have there? You think is enough being done, or this is just the beginning?
What has really happened is that the model has changed. The changed from, typically where you hire and train to a model where you source, you enroll the person for a third-party program. He completes the training program, which is sponsored self by him, financed by the banks, and then he gets hired by the banking organization, which means that what we're looking for is essentially the first hour productivity. And the challenge for us is, and what we have to a reasonable extent achieved, is pushing the time and cost to the aspiring individual so that when he comes on board pretty much trained.
Soft skills are very much, necessary in the space that you operate in. What's been your experience?
In my experience, organizations have now, and I like this, this connotation that we are now ready to take talent which is ready to cook, rather than what we used to be on ready to eat. So we wanted somebody, a talent who's ready to be billable, ready to work, ready to bring business, ready to get onto work. Now we are at least opening our eyes to see that, okay, now let's see. So this is my reality. How do I build skill? How do I get... I was reading a very interesting thing, like what Amtech does in US is almost 30 community colleges only work for an automotive industry, and that's where they provide. Germany does it very well. In fact, I saw them that almost all the interns they already knew which company they're going to work and how are they going to get skilled, so they're getting skilled as well as getting a job exposure at the same time. India is far away from that. I don't think so. I can, as being a part of a retail industry, can say that I'll hire you and see how you get skilled on the way. So it doesn't work like that. But yes, the baby steps have begun. In my organization, we have a very clear leadership talent review, and we believe in growing people from within. So you also have to make sure that they come from a good pedigree. They have a kind of... so when in an organization, when the revenue is a question mark, like I go back to the no that, yes, where do you find time and money for expenses for the training? So, so it's a very, it is a double whammy, and I personally feel that organizations are yet to come to that maturity level where we would say that no, we look at it as an investment. And I think, like, it's easy to say in a forum here when when we say, okay, yes, we look at it as an investment, but when it comes to hardcore investment, when it comes to survival, when it comes to making sure that it's next year's business expansion, then where do we take a call?
I represent automobile industry, unlike most of members who are from software industry. We enjoy the attrition levels much better than what software companies have. We enjoy it to the extent of under 2% of attrition. And when it comes to training, especially at the blue collar level, it's more of a standardized work. So it is, I'm not sure how much beyond that we can go for training. So I would want your insights on what is that we can do beyond this standardized training.
I'm not in complete agreement with you because you did mention that A, the attrition is low, and B, beyond the standard programs, what you can do. Well, I tell you, there is one clear shift, and all of us have read about, all of us have heard about that for a very long time, we felt that India has really missed the opportunity we had to become a very strong manufacturing hub, right? And which IT was able to establish itself. But that's changing, and that's changing because of a lot of other external factors. And people are seeking another strong alternative to China, and we have already seen how companies from India are beginning to export. So the point being made is, if we have now an ambition, it just cannot be an element of so many people available and I can train them. The expectation, if we have to play in the global playing field, there is a certain threshold expectation of quality, and for that, I do not think we are adequately ready. So there is lot still, the onus falls on, again, in a minor way compared to IT, on the organizations to do it, but that's by itself and by themselves alone. Maybe some of the large manufacturing houses, they do it brilliantly, but if you're talking about the whole SMEs who are part of your own supply chain and they have to be upgraded, I think there has to be a lot better orchestration where today it is not touching at all.